All right, so every year this real estate trends book comes out, and it always makes waves. But this year, wow. The 2026 edition is making an incredibly bold claim that the future of Seoul's property market is pretty much already set in stone. Today, we're going to break down what that means slide by slide.
And there it is, right off the bat, the author just lays it all out there. The future of Seoul real estate is already decided. Notice the wording. It's not a prediction, it's not a forecast, it's presented as a done deal. That's a heck of a way to start a book, and it definitely gets your attention.
Okay, so this is probably what you're thinking, right? We're hearing all this talk about a slowing economy, crazy high interest rates, and even a population that's shrinking. So how on earth can anyone be so certain that one of the most expensive property markets in the world is about to go on another major run-up? Let's get into it.
So to figure that out, we've got to look at this major disconnect between what pretty much everyone else is saying and what this author is predicting.
And this slide just lays it out so clearly. On one side, you've got all the reasons to be worried. The recession chatter, the high cost of borrowing, fewer people. But then, look at the other side. The author's take is completely different. They're talking about a new super cycle, unavoidable price hikes, and they say the real story, the one that trumps everything else, is a massive supply shortage.
So you might be wondering, where does all this confidence come from? Well, to get it, we actually have to rewind a little bit and look at their last major prediction. The groundwork for this 2026 forecast was actually laid last year.
So back in the 2025 edition of the book, the author coined this exact term, the super cycle. While most people were bracing for a market crash, they went completely against the grain and said, nope, Seoul is actually just getting started on a huge upward climb. It was a really contrarian take at the time. And here's the kicker. The author basically says, I told you so. They point to the fact that instead of crashing, key areas like Gangnam didn't just stabilize, they bounced back and even started smashing previous records. For the author, this was proof, the first piece of hard evidence that their supercycle theory was playing out in real time.
Okay, so if the supercycle was the big picture, what's the engine driving it forward in 2026? Well, that brings us to the core of this new forecast, a concept the author calls the ascent domino.
The ascent domino, or 상승 domino. It sounds dramatic, but the idea is actually pretty straightforward. Think of it this way. Gangnam is the first biggest domino. When prices there get pushed to a new record high, it doesn't just stop. That pressure has to go somewhere. It triggers a chain reaction, pushing up prices in the areas next door, and then the ones next to them until it spreads across the whole city.
And this slide shows you exactly how that chain reaction is supposed to work. Step 1. It all kicks off because there just aren't enough new apartments being built. That scarcity creates pressure. Then, that pressure hits the most desirable, most expensive areas first. That's your Gangnam. After that, people who can no longer afford Gangnam create the spillover effect into other regions. And finally, you have rising Chenzhe prices, which kind of put a floor under the market and push sales prices even higher. It all just feeds on itself.
So what's actually pushing these dominoes over? The author zeroes in on 3 key factors that they believe are going to fuel this entire cycle.
All right, so here are the 3 pillars holding up this whole theory. First, that supply shortage we talked about, it's structural, it's not going away anytime soon. Second, they're betting that interest rates are headed down. And third, they highlight the unique role of the John-C system, which they see as this powerful buffer against inflation.
But wait a minute. I know what you're thinking. What about interest rates? I mean, come on, high rates are supposed to be kryptonite for a housing market, right? How does the author explain that away?
Well, here's the thing. The author's entire forecast is built on the assumption that high rates are a temporary problem. This chart is actually from their last book, and you can see they were already predicting a big drop in interest rates, from 3.5% down to 2.5%. They're basically banking on cheaper money coming back to fuel the fire for 2026.
Now, you really can't talk about Seoul real estate without talking about Chenzhe. For anyone who's not familiar, it's this unique rental system where you put down a huge lump sum deposit instead of paying monthly rent. When those deposit prices go up, it pushes more people to consider buying and gives landlords a ton of capital. It can act like an accelerant for the sales market.
And to back up this idea of long-term resilience, the author points to Tokyo. Just look at this chart. After that infamous bubble popped in the early 90s, everyone wrote off Tokyo real estate for dead. But eventually, it didn't just recover, it soared. The message here is that prime real estate in a global megacity like Seoul plays the long game.
Okay, so what does this all mean for you, for me, for anyone watching the market? If this decided future actually happens, what's it going to look like on the ground?
Well, the author is predicting one thing loud and clear: extreme polarization. And these pictures say it all, don't they? The gap between those brand new, amenity-rich, top-tier complexes and the older, denser housing, well, that gap is going to become a canyon. The whole market isn't going to rise together, it's going to split apart.
And in a market like that, one Korean phrase becomes everything: 직주근접. It literally means work-home proximity. The idea is that the ultimate luxury, the thing that will command the absolute highest prices, is a short, easy commute to the main job centers.
So, to wrap it all up, here are the key things to watch for, according to the book. Expect that market divide to get even wider. A handful of market-leading complexes are going to pull even further ahead. How close you live to your job will be more valuable than ever, and that ascent domino effect will be the main force driving all of it.
But the book doesn't end with a celebration. It leaves us with this really sobering final thought. The aftermath will inevitably return as someone's responsibility. It's a pretty stark warning, isn't it? It suggests that if this powerful, polarizing price surge actually happens, the social and economic fallout could be huge. And it leaves you with one final, unsettling question: who's going to pick up the pieces when the bill comes due?